It seems like all the Chicago Bears know how to do is pull out close victories at the last minute. But this fourth quarter comeback against the Minnesota Vikings felt like a little bit of a different path than some of the recent Bears victories we've seen.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. On the show today, we're going to break down this Bears win over the Minnesota Vikings and the aspects of it that felt a little different than the previous one-score, fourth quarter game-winning comeback drives at the very end. We start with a Bears defense that held the Vikings to 17 points and set up the only Bears victory this season where they've scored fewer than 20 points in the game. Then we'll look at this Bears offense and why maybe they didn't score as many points as they had in every other win this season and every game except for the Baltimore Ravens loss. And we got to talk about special teams as well, where there's certainly some struggles through most of the game, but then Devin Duvernay and Cairo Santos are the ones who come up clutch at the end. So a lot to get through today. But when I try and think about the biggest story of this game, to me, it's a combination of the lack of scoring on offense, but then also like the lack of a need for high scoring from the offense to still be able to win the game. And that's kind of where I come back to this Chicago Bears defense. Ultimately, in any game that you hold the opponent to 17 points, you should win, right? That should be a winning defensive performance the vast majority of the time, and it absolutely was in this game. You kept this Vikings offense from consistently finding the end zone. They didn't until the fourth quarter, at the very end there with Mason and Addison's touchdowns there, but like for the most part, this defense held things down, and there was a familiar feeling there down the stretch when you're leading 16-3 in the fourth quarter and the Vikings score once, and then they score again, and they take that late lead, just kind of like week one when the Vikings scored a bunch in the fourth quarter, and you're like, uh-oh, what's going wrong here? But to me, like, the defense still generally played okay, right? Like, they did enough to get the job done, but it felt a little bit more to me like through the first three quarters, it was a lot of J.J. McCarthy missing and the Vikings beating themselves, more so than this Bears defense overall playing a super, super strong game. Like, I think the two interceptions, the Kevin Byard stepping in front of the underneath pass and then Nahshon Wright winning that jump ball in the end zone, those were both impressive individual plays by defensive backs to force those turnovers. But I thought more generally, what held the Vikings offense back the most was J.J. McCarthy missing open receivers through a lot of this game. And then when he did connect with open receivers, they dropped him. And Jordan Addison had a handful of drops. Justin Jefferson had a drop. I think Hawkinson had a drop. There were drops all over the place for the Vikings. And I think if this Vikings team had held on to their accurate passes and maybe had a little bit more consistent of a quarterback, we would be talking a little bit differently about this Bears defensive performance. And yet, this is a group that finds a way to buckle down and have winning performances. Again, like 17 points absolutely gets the job done, and they absolutely deserve credit for the two turnovers that they forced. Like, yes, McCarthy still has to throw the ball in a spot where they could come over and make the play, but not every cornerback is making that interception that Nahshon Wright skies up in high points in front of Jordan Addison. And certainly not every safety is tracking J.J. McCarthy and coming back around on that underneath throw to get that other interception off of McCarthy. But like, you look at J.J. McCarthy's passing chart, and it's not necessarily littered with great throws, right? I mean, not much getting complete downfield. Their best downfield pass was really the touchdown at the front of the end zone to Jordan Addison on the left side, but it's a lot of checkdowns and throwing behind the line of scrimmage. And that can certainly work as an offensive strategy. It's something that the Bears had some success doing in this game, but for the Vikings, it absolutely wasn't enough in this one when you're just missing some of the easy layup throws. And the big difference is Caleb hits some of the more difficult over the middle, deep in cutting routes in this game that can be the difference for sure. And then, I think the Vikings finally got more of a running game going later in the game, but generally speaking, they didn't let Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason really gash them consistently throughout. It was just sort of fourth quarter, some things started to wear down and fall apart there. But for the most part, this defense was generally getting the job done. They forced six punts in this game. It wasn't like the Commanders game or the Raiders game or even the Bengals game where every drive had to either be touchdown or points or turnover, right? They couldn't get off the field in some of these previous games. And that's one of the big differences defensively here is the Bears found ways to get off the field. I saw the stat. I'm pretty sure Kevin Fishbane from The Athletic was the one who tweeted it out. So I'd like to give proper credit where credit is due here. And I apologize if I'm not giving the proper credit there, but the Vikings, yeah, it was Kevin Fishbane. The Vikings were 1 for 9 on third downs after the opening drive. So first drive of the game, Vikings converted a couple third downs. Then after that opening drive, they were 1 for 9 on third downs. There very clearly is some quality of defense being played there. And it's not purely just, the Vikings shooting themselves in the foot over and over again. I thought they got a little bit more pressure on J.J. McCarthy than we had seen in some other games. Grady Jarrett got a little bit more involved in the passing game. They didn't blitz him a ton. It was still too many plays where he had too much time to throw, but maybe there was a little bit of progress here and there. And we can still have some grace for having Noah Sewell really struggling in there at linebacker and making the defense's job more difficult. At one point, Tyreek Stevenson and Jaquan Brisker collide, and they both leave the game with injury. So you have Jonathan Owens and Nick McLeod out there, and McLeod was really not effective for the Bears at all in this game. We can have some grace for this being a banged-up defense going up against a well-schemed offense from Kevin O'Connell, and I think that's where you saw the Vikings have some success there. And then the quarterback issues and the drop passes issues was a big impediment for them that they were not able to overcome. Whereas on the Bears side, you saw, the Bears also weren't running the ball down their throats super, super well. It was a little bit slow rolling in the running game. And Caleb missed some deep shots down, and the Bears had some dropped passes as well. And yet they were able to overcome some of their own mistakes and elevate above imperfection to find a way to hold on and win this game. So we'll take a look at where this Bears offense did well and where they struggled a little bit to be held to only 19 points in a winning effort next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. So say yes to making the switch and get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. So are you ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's MINT, mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. So this Bears defense did enough to hold down the Vikings offense to 17 points that a Bears offense should be able to win consistently. And in this game, they absolutely were. And yet, I think one of the big differences for this comeback victory compared to previous is in other Bears comebacks, it's kind of a shootout of Bears score, opponent scores, Bears score, opponent scores, Bears score, and you're the team with the ball last, and so you end up being the last one to score, and you win the game. But this was much more of a field position battle, punt battle, both defenses are starting to break a little bit at the end. Who can hold on to make one more stop when they need to, or just slow them down, take enough time off the clock when you need to, and hold them to field goal instead of touchdown when you need to. And that's ultimately what proved to be the difference in this game, because I didn't think Caleb Williams had a horrible game by any means, but it wasn't a great game from Caleb Williams either. I think he can exist somewhere in the middle for a contest like this. I mean, he and J.J. McCarthy finished with the exact same number of pass attempts and completions. 16 of 32 for 50% is not great. Both quarterbacks had drops from their receivers. I think, I was going to say that one was more consequential than the other, but I think they were both about the same. DJ Moore had a couple of those in and out of his hands. It was frustrating moments that if those passes are caught for both teams, I think we think more highly of both quarterbacks' performances in these games. And I think the drops negate a lot of that for us in our head. But obviously the continued Houdini act, escape artist stuff from Caleb in the pocket is just so impressive every single week. But I've been really impressed, especially with, of course, getting out of the sack. Perhaps the most difficult and impressive part, but from an individual growth standpoint for Caleb, we've seen him get out of those sacks even as a rookie. But what he's so much better at now is doing something with it once he gets out of those sacks. It's too often in last year, he'd avoid the first sack, get out of the pocket, and then still end up taking a sack, or he'd scramble and he'd run out of bounds short of the line of scrimmage, but now he's throwing it away, or he is finding a check down and getting something done with it, or occasionally scrambling and getting past the line of scrimmage. I think there was a clear effort from Brian Flores in this game to try and limit how much damage Caleb could do with his legs. They blitzed a ton to get after him, and I think that's a big part of this evaluation for this game that I think we need to keep in mind, that not only is Brian Flores just a smart defensive play caller, and this Vikings defense is not terrible by any means, but when the opposing defense sets a game plan of, we're going to blitz you, I think the initial number from PFF was 77 or 78% of Caleb's passing plays the Vikings were blitzing him on. 3 out of 4 plays, blitzes are coming his way. 8 out of 10. I guess that'd be 4 out of 5 also. Blitz is coming constantly. And that limits some of what you can do as an offense. Now, it can create other things in response to that blitz, and that's Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams' job to be able to take advantage of that. But, they could not sit back and run the exact, Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams offense that you would like to against a more standard defense that will blitz you sometimes, but it's going to rush 4 sometimes. Preparing for the blitz is always a part of every game plan, but when they're blitzing on almost every single snap, it changes what you can do from a route concept standpoint, from a blocking scheme standpoint, from how often you're leaving guys into chip and double team and help your tackles, especially Theo Benedict in a game like this. How often you're running play action and trying to create space in the ground game to try and slow down the blitz, right? There's just a certain amount of not necessarily the defense dictating what you're going to do on offense, but it does take away some of the things. And so you still have a choice of how you want to attack the blitz in multiple ways. They're not going to force you to say you have to do X, Y, or Z on every play when they blitz. There's more than one way to beat the blitz. And we saw them throw screens in the blitz. We saw them try and block up max protection and try and develop something downfield against the blitz. We saw them throw quick checkdowns. There's a lot of different ways they could do it. But the point being, it wasn't necessarily open playbook, run everything you want to be able to run. And so I think that's where I kind of come back to this being a passable offensive performance here, because it was a difficult spot for them to be able to be in. I'm glad that Ben Johnson eventually stuck to the running game, got DeAndre Swift up to 21 carries, 90 yards in the game, and Monangai had another 12. So there was a clear emphasis on running the ball and controlling the clock, especially down the stretch there. The Bears definitely controlled the time of possession in this game. What was it, 37-23? Ended up being about the split there. So I think there were some things to like, but then you had Travis Homer getting a handoff on 3rd down into the shotgun. That his face mask was definitely pulled, no flag, but I'm still more concerned about Travis Homer getting the carry there than the flag not being thrown there. Or bringing Tyson Bagent in at receiver multiple times on running plays. I like throwing a wrinkle out there for opposing defenses, but I don't know. When you've been in all these tight games, it's one thing when you're leading by a lot. It's another thing when the game is kind of close and back and forth, and you feel like at any time the Vikings could climb back into this game. And it's just kind of there's just like little wrinkly concerns in there, but nothing like, systemic or big picture that you're overly worried about. It just kind of felt like, yeah, there was some issues getting into rhythm early on. Caleb was taking some deep shots on third down that just couldn't quite connect on, and then, not on the same page at times with Luther Burden, and then some drop passes in there, and then, a couple of sacks in there. And they did a good job of overcoming some of the long down and distance situations that the Bears offense got in this game. They get 3rd and 13 after an illegal formation penalty in the second quarter, and then they throw a screen pass to Luther Burden that picks up a first down on 3rd and 13. Or they had a sack play that, it was a tackle for loss on a running play. They get in a 3rd and 14, and he completes it to Loveland over the middle, and he converts a 3rd and 14. And there was another one too where they got into 3rd and 20 plus and got like 23 yards back on that third down to make it 4th and short. I can't find the play in my notes here, but you'll remember the sequence when they were really kind of backed up and just finding ways to get a bunch of yards back when they were otherwise put in long down and distance situations that they have struggled to overcome in the past. And so like you can find a lot to be encouraged. Like when one thing's going wrong, they found some ways to overcome it, but like they couldn't quite get everything going all right, all together, all at the same time, consistently enough. And that's kind of been the big storyline of the season, right? Doing it for 4 quarters, not just starting hot and finishing hot, or doing well in the middle. Like this game was a lot of drive down, field goal, drive down, field goal, drive down, missed field goal, drive down, field goal. I mean, they had 5 field goal attempts in this game, and that's why you only get 19 points instead of what probably should have been, you convert a couple of those into touchdowns. It should have been a much easier win, and you wouldn't have needed then a late, under a minute left, game-winning field goal drive that was largely set up by special teams. We'll talk about that in just a second here. But like, you still feel like they're on the precipice of something here. But I do get a little concerned about like, hey, you had a 16-3 lead in the fourth quarter, and you completely blew it and gave up 14 unanswered points at that time. And we saw the same thing happen against the Bengals, where you had a multi-score lead in the fourth quarter and you give it up and they come back in the game. And you had a multi-score lead against the Vikings in week 1 and you give it up and you lose the game. And I think they had a double-digit lead against the Raiders, I think, and even the Saints, like, they had a couple moments with that lead where they gave up some points. So that's a bigger, broader concern that I do want to talk about. I want to focus on that and some of the sustainability aspects of this winning on tomorrow's Locked On Bears podcast. But I also think it's worth taking some time to look at this Bears special teams that we were spending most of the game complaining about until we got to the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, special teams were the heroes of this game. So we'll take a look at, I don't know, where things stand for Cairo Santos, who missed a kick but got a game ball, and Devin Duvernay, who hadn't done much until the very end, and then the kick coverage was a problem in this game. Torrey Taylor had a bad punt or two in this game. So it's just it's a little bit messy on that third phase that we'll take a closer look at next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by FanDuel. We're all enjoying the NFL season so far, but now the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the basketball action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Because even if you missed the start of a game, or you just want to ride the hot hand as it's going along, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It just keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is the one that's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I want to make Bears special teams the hero of the game because, you're losing by 1 with under a minute in the fourth quarter, and Devin Duvernay rips off the, 56, 52-yard kickoff return, however long it was, gets you basically across midfield, and then all you got to do is hand the ball off 3 times, and then Cairo Santos comes in, and certainly I think we were all holding our breath on that 48-yard field goal attempt after his miss earlier in the game. And boy, he cut it even a little closer than I would have liked him to on that kick. But all that matters is it went in. And Bears special teams went from like part of the reason why they were losing in the fourth quarter to a big reason why they were winning when the clock had 0-0 on it. And yet I find myself like with time to reflect on it, and I haven't had enough time to go back through like the all 22, after the game wrapped up, but like having been able to kind of sit with it for a minute, I find myself feeling like, yes, in the literal sense, the Bears special teams won them the game, but I don't think necessarily they needed their special teams to have to win them the game. Only in the sense that, like, just because the special teams did it so that the offense didn't need to, but it's not as though the offense couldn't have had the special teams not been able to, right? Like, Devin Duvernay's return made it really, really easy for Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams to just go out there, hand the ball off 3 times, and kick the game-winning field goal. But if Devin Duvernay doesn't have that long return, it's not as though that means the Bears lose the game. We don't know what happens if Caleb Williams starts that drive at the 30 instead of the, whatever it was, the plus 40. But we have seen Caleb Williams now in not only, 3 consecutive games, but multiple games across the season, lead his team on a game-winning drive on the final drive of these games. Like, we have seen him do it, and we had seen him move the ball against this Vikings defense in this game. I guess they hadn't scored a touchdown since the second quarter, so there's some reason to wonder just how effective they would be down the stretch. But I think we were all pretty confident that the Bears, with 3 timeouts and whatever, I got to find the exact time limit that was left. It was under a minute, but it was like 50 seconds, I think, was how much time was left when the Vikings scored their touchdown. So the kickoff return obviously took some seconds off the clock, but essentially 50 seconds left and 3 timeouts, down 1. I think we've built enough of a trust this season that Caleb Williams, is it too strong to say probably would have driven them down to at least a field goal attempt? Can't say for sure that he would have driven them down to a game-winning touchdown, but driven them down to a game-winning field goal attempt is something I feel pretty confident in. And it feels weird to be that confident in a Bears offense and a Bears quarterback to drive down and win the game in the most difficult moments, because we have years and years and years of that not happening. But now we've got game after game after game of that continuing to happen, and I feel pretty good about their chances there. I give Cairo Santos full credit because you were probably going to need him to hit a field goal there. And, I'm not 100% sure Caleb Williams scores a touchdown on that drive. I'm pretty confident he gets them into field goal range. So, like, Santos gets some real credit there, but only after having missed a field goal earlier in that game. Like, it kind of feels like Santos made up for his miss there and kind of brings it back to net zero. Like, if he would have hit the field goal earlier in the game, it would have been a different story, right? The Vikings would have been down too many points. They would have had to attempt 2-point conversions, I think, on both of their touchdown drives, because the Bears, if Cairo Santos hits that field goal, the Bears would have been at 19. So it would have been 19-3. And so the Vikings would have needed both 2-point conversions on both touchdowns to even tie it at 19. And you wouldn't have even been in a situation where you needed a game-winning drive. Sure, like, overtime would have been the threat there, but like it would have been impossible for the Vikings to take the lead on 2 touchdowns had Cairo Santos hit the field goal earlier in the game. And so to me, it's like Santos undid his mistake from earlier by hitting the game winner, but it wasn't like he went above and beyond there. It was more like, you dug yourself out of the hole that you dug yourself into. You pulled yourself out of the hole you dug yourself into. And like, Duvernay hadn't made a mistake earlier in the game, but it felt like Duvernay's return made up for, like, the Bears blocking got a long return to make up for the long return they allowed on the punt in the early fourth quarter that set up the Vikings' first touchdown. You remember that drive where the Bears came out and Caleb Williams got sacked on, I think, back-to-back plays. And then the Bears had to punt it away. The Vikings had a long return there. I'm trying to find the exact sequence here. Yeah, it was back-to-back sacks. They punt it. Vikings have a long return, and then Jordan Mason gets the 16-yard touchdown run there, and all of a sudden it's 16-10, and you're looking around like saying, what happened? Like, so special teams coverage made life difficult for the Bears defense, so then special teams return balance that out by making life easier for the Bears offense. But like, I don't know that like special teams doesn't finish as a net positive for me, even though they'd had the good stuff at the most important time and the bad stuff earlier in the game when you could still potentially overcome the bad stuff. Like, to me, it was like they messed up and then they made up for it at the end. And that brings you back to, at best, a net neutral. But like, man, you can't mess up like that earlier in the game and put your team in those kind of bad positions. Because, I mean, Torrey Taylor had a couple of punts that were not phenomenal in this game, and they got a good bounce on a couple of them. Like, they did, those punts it wasn't like a shank that set up a touchdown for the other team, but just wasn't great. And same like when they tried to pin them back deep by their own end zone when the Bears took the delay of game near midfield and like still gave them the ball around the 20-yard line. Like, these weren't great special teams all around there. I mean, I guess Santos hitting the 54-yarder was probably the most impressive thing up to that point. Some real depth. I think that was a season long for him. So that's something. But when you follow that up with a miss later on in the game, then it kind of undoes a lot of that too. So I'm just left feeling like I didn't gain anywhere positive from special teams in this game. And if anything, I still feel weary that like at any given point, Santos is going to miss another field goal. Like, how much do you trust Santos? He hit the game winner, but it doesn't like earn back all of your trust from the misses in back-to-back games. And like Devin Duvernay has a big return, but like that doesn't leave me any more confident that they're going to be able to properly cover, the Steelers and Eagles and Packers kickoff and punt returners in the coming games when we've seen them give up long returns against multiple opponents in multiple situations. So you just worry that maybe special teams doesn't cost you the game against a 4-6 Vikings team, but like every team on the Bears schedule from here on out, except for the Browns, are pushing for playoff spots here. Like, your margin for error gets even smaller against especially the Eagles and Packers and Lions, but Steelers and 49ers as well. I mean, we'll see if Aaron Rodgers plays on Sunday or not. That could change some of the dynamics of that game, but we'll find out more about what the Steelers status is this week when we have our crossover Thursday with Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers coming up this week. So make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Bears on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. I can tell, I can feel myself, you can maybe be able to hear a little nasaliness too. Like, I'm on the beginning of being a little sick. I'm not going to miss a podcast this week, especially because I was gone, last week for a full week there. So I'm not going to let you miss out. I'm just going to end up probably being a little bit more sniffly, a little bit more nasally, and hopefully not too much lower energy, but I can feel the drain already kind of setting in. So we're going to power through the way the Bears power through and come up clutch in the fourth quarter. Locked On Bears isn't going anywhere all week long. So appreciate you sticking with us. Appreciate you making us your first listen each and every day. If you're looking for a second listen, you can always check out the Locked On NFL podcast for more football talk, because that comes out twice a day. You get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast with Tyler Rowland in the morning, giving you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end your day. So find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Coming back tomorrow, make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.